and they contribute nothing. The welfare is like 88%. They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you. Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country's no good for a reason. Their country stinks, and we don't want them in our country. I could say that about other countries, too. I can say it about other countries, too. We don't want them to hell. We have to rebuild our country. You know, our country's at a tipping point. We can go bad. We're at a tipping point. I don't know if people mind me saying that, but I'm saying it. We could go one way or the other, and we're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. And they complain and do nothing but bitch. We don't want them in our country. Let them go back to where they came from and fix it.
The existential and phenomenological tradition in philosophy, from Edmund Husserl and Martin Heidegger through Jean-Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, and Albert Camus, grounds its moral insights not in abstract principles, but in the shared structures of human existence itself. These structures constitute a deeper refutation of supremacy than any purely logical argument, because they expose how fundamentally supremacy misunderstands what human beings are. Every human being, without exception and without variation by any of the categories supremacy employs, exists in the following condition: thrown into existence without choosing it, constituted by a body that is vulnerable to pain, illness, and death, embedded in relationships of dependence and interdependence, oriented toward a future that is uncertain and ultimately terminal, and endowed with the capacity for meaning-making in the face of radical contingency. This is the human condition, and it is a condition that admits of no exceptions. The aristocrat and the slave, the colonizer and the colonized, the person held to be supremely valuable and the person declared to be worthless, all exist in exactly this way. The shared structure of human existence is not a sentimental observation. It is the phenomenological ground of ethics. We recognize the moral weight of others' suffering, their fear, their grief, their joy, not because we reason our way to it abstractly, but because we encounter them as beings who exist as we exist, vulnerable, finite, meaning-seeking, mortal. Supremacy requires its adherents to override this recognition, to see through the other person's humanity rather than into it. It requires, in phenomenological terms, a systematic misrecognition. Jean-Paul Sartre's existential framework illuminates supremacy as a form of bad faith, the fundamental dishonesty by which human beings attempt to flee from the anxiety of their freedom by treating themselves or others as things rather than as free subjects. Sartre's analysis of the encounter with another person reveals the deep reciprocity at the heart of human existence. I am a free subject, but so is the other person. Their freedom constitutes a challenge to mine. I cannot reduce them to an object without bad faith, because they are always and irreducibly a subject. Supremacy, on this account, is a sustained act of bad faith. It attempts to fix the members of the designated inferior group as things, as labor, as territory, as problems, rather than as free subjectivities. But this project is self-undermining. It requires constant effort precisely because the people being reduced to things keep demonstrating, by their very existence, that they are not things. Their resistance, their expression, their suffering, all of these manifest the subjectivity that supremacy is trying to deny. Supremacy is existentially a fight against reality. Furthermore, the supremacist is not only wrong about others, they are in bad faith about themselves. By adopting a fixed identity as a member of the superior group and treating this as an essence that determines their worth, they attempt to flee from the radical freedom and contingency of their own existence. The supremacist identity is a way of evading the anxiety of freedom by pretending that one's worth is given rather than chosen, absolute rather than constructed. It is a philosophical flight from honesty. Simone de Beauvoir's The Ethics of Ambiguity and The Second Sex extend existentialist analysis in directions directly relevant to supremacy. De Beauvoir's central insight is that genuine human freedom cannot be achieved through the oppression of others. The oppressor, in dominating another, limits not only the freedom of the dominated, but their own freedom as well. This argument is not merely strategic, but metaphysical. The self, for de Beauvoir, constitutes itself through its projects, through the free, open-ended engagement with the world and with others. When another person is reduced to an instrument or an obstacle rather than recognized as a fellow free subject, the oppressor's own world is diminished. They lose the genuine encounter with an other that is essential to human development. A supremacist surrounded by people they have systematically reduced to a category of servitude moves through a world populated by projections of their own ideology, rather than genuine human beings. Their understanding of reality, human possibility, and themselves is correspondingly impoverished. Supremacy is, among other things, a self-imposed narrowing of the world. Albert Camus approaches supremacy from the angle of revolt and solidarity. In The Rebel, Camus argues that authentic revolt against injustice necessarily moves towards solidarity, rather than toward a new form of domination. The person who revolts against being oppressed affirms something in the name of which they revolt: a value, a dignity, a standard of treatment that they claim for themselves. But the logic of that affirmation is universalizing. The value they claim is one that, if genuine, applies to all human beings in their situation. Revolt that ends in a new supremacy has betrayed its own origins. The authentic response to the absurdity of the human condition, to the recognition that we are finite, mortal creatures in a universe that offers no guarantees, is not to build hierarchies that pretend some lives are cosmically more significant than others, but to achieve solidarity with all who share the same mortal condition. Against all forms of death and denial, the only appropriate response is affirmation of life, and that affirmation, if it is to be honest, cannot be selective.